There are so many different ways that you can make a bad purchase in Cambridge and Somerville, and I've seen a lot of them. But there's one particular way that seems to happen on a very frequent basis, and it seems to me like a lot of buyers are just totally oblivious. So in today's video, I'm gonna share one shortcut. If you just focus on this one thing, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a deep dive on this one thing, you're gonna significantly reduce the chances of making a bad purchase in Cambridge or Somerville. Hey guys, if you don't know me, my name is Sage Jankowitz. I'm a realtor based in Cambridge and Somerville, Massachusetts. I've closed over 300 transactions in the last 3 years. I've also lived in and around Cambridge and Somerville for the last 10-ish years. Before I get into the video, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. If you guys have questions, there is a Calendly link in the description below. I'm always happy to hop on a free 15-minute call to have a free conversation, answer any questions you might have. All right, let's get into the video. We've all probably heard the phrase location, location, location. Your grandpa or grandma probably said it to you at some point when they were talking about real estate, 20 years ago. I always heard it. Actually, my grandpa was an appraiser and he always used to say that to me. And it was one of these things where I always heard it, but I didn't really understand what it meant. So in today's video, we're gonna go into location, 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 and at least as it applies specifically to Cambridge, Somerville, and a few other surrounding towns where I work, what that really means and how I apply it and how I think you should apply it in your everyday buying search. So the first thing that I would strongly recommend you think about when we're thinking of location, when you're looking in Cambridge or Somerville, Massachusetts, is what kind of walking distance is it to the T? And a lot of times people will say it's walking distance. The seller's agent always is gonna push its walking distance to a T stop. But different people are okay with different amounts of time. In my personal opinion, if I were buying Cambridge or Somerville, I highly, highly, highly would focus on properties that are a 15-minute walk or less. Once you start getting in the 20-minute walk range, it's just going to turn off a lot of people, particularly if at some point you're planning on turning it into an investment property, or even if in the future you want to sell it, it's going to be hard to sell if it's more than a 15-minute walk to a T-stop. And to take that a step further, if you can aim for 10 minutes or less, or even 5 minutes or less, as you get closer and closer, you're going to add more and more value typically. Now, there are some exceptions. You don't want to be so close to a place, say in the heart of Davis Square, above a really loud bar. That might not be ideal. We'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But the bottom line is the closer you are to a T-stop, most of the time, that's going to mean increased value now, increased value in the future, due mostly to just more demand. There's going to be more people that are interested in the property now and in the future. Next up, the street really matters. Okay, so if you're buying on a street that maybe is only a 7-minute walk to the T, but it's a really loud, busy street, it's got a lot of traffic, it's got a lot of cars maybe during rush hour that are all lined up right outside your window, that's not really super desirable. And what you'll find is often these properties will be priced a little bit lower than similar properties even around the corner. And so you as a buyer might say, this is great, I'm saving, $40,000, $50,000 compared to this other one. It's a little bit more on budget, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But understand that in the future, when you then decide to sell the thing, you're also gonna have a discount on the flip side. So that's something to just be aware of when you're buying. There's nothing wrong with that, but from a pure appreciation perspective, the numbers just aren't gonna be as strong over time. And just to add on to this a little bit further, there's other qualities about what street it's on that can be helpful. Busy street, not desirable. A quiet street is really nice. A quiet one-way street is even better. There tends to be less traffic. If it's a dead end, if it's a cul-de-sac, if it's in an area that tends to be very congested, but it's a block over and it's set back from the street, these are all things that can add value and desirability in the eyes of a buyer, and again, lead to increased value and price over time. Next up, we talked a lot about being close to the T and how that's super, super important in your search. But some people don't understand that it's not just the distance, the time it takes you to get to your T-stop, but it's also the commuting route that really matters. So for example, you might be an 8-minute walk to the T, But if you have to cross McGrath Highway or another really busy, 6-lane highway or even 4-lane highway to get somewhere, that is less desirable. And if you think about it, well, again, whether you're renting it to a tenant or you're going to sell it to, a family or some young professionals or some retirees in the future, if they have to cross that street, it's less desirable. So when you're looking for a property, you don't just want to think about how long of a walk it takes to get to the T, but also what does that route look like? If you have to take a walk on the bike path to get to Davis Square, that's a really nice route, and that's actually adding value. On the other hand, if you have to go over a highway or busy streets, or it's a real pain and you have to go, up and over a pedestrian walkway, that's kind of annoying, and that is going to affect resale value. So you should take that into account as well. The next thing I think about when I'm thinking about location is, what does the future look like, okay? And this is super important, and it's something that a lot of buyers, I think, don't really take into account. Is this an area that's basically gonna be pretty similar in 5-10 years from now? Or are there clear things changing that's gonna make this area change? Is it likely that there's gonna be more cool stuff, new transit, new businesses that will bring in more people with better paying jobs that are willing to pay more in the future? Or is this an area that's kind of in a place that 10 years ago was pretty much the same way it is now, and there's no signs of things changing? If that's the case, it's less likely that this area is going to appreciate in a very aggressive way in the future. And also, the way I think about it, if the economy takes a turn for the worse, and if specifically the real estate market starts softening, what areas are likely to also turn with it? Well, it's more likely to be areas that have less stuff happening as opposed to areas with a lot of cool stuff happening and growing. That's something to take into account as well. Next up, are there any sort of things that are just going to turn off a lot of buyers in extremely close proximity to the property? For example, I sold a beautiful townhouse. It was a great layout and a great location, but it was literally right next to a gas station. It turns out a lot of people don't want to live next to a gas station. And because of that, they're going to end up paying a lot less than a very similar property that's not next to a gas station. So that's a really good example. Next to a fire department or police station, that's a good example. Above a bar, there's a lot of examples like this, but you need to just kind of think logically here. If it's an area that's going to have a lot of noise, potential pollution, if there's some other downside that's going to turn a lot of people off, understand that again, on resale, there's going to be a discount, just like the discount you're getting right now. Here's another one around location. Views can matter a lot, okay? So for example, if you were looking in Arlington, you're looking for a property that has great views of Spy Pond, a lot of people will pay a premium. In fact, I have consistently seen properties that will go for $200,000 to $400,000 more than a similar property that doesn't have those views. And I have seen some really dumpy places go for outrageously high prices because people will pay a premium for a view. Now, why is this? First of all, people just love a good view, but more importantly, there's very little inventory. A lot of these areas, say for example, Newton, right? There's Crystal Lake, that's another area. There's only so many houses that have any kind of view of Crystal Lake in all of Newton. And of those, there's only a handful that have a great view. So when you really think about it, it's really just simply a supply and demand issue. So these people tend to pay a premium for, they tend to grow at an aggressive clip. Even if it's a dumpy property, if it has those views, there's a good chance someone's gonna pay a premium for it and do either a full gut reno or knock the whole thing down and start fresh. And they're willing to pay that because they know over the long run, it's gonna grow at a fast rate and they're paying for something special, something unique that's hard to find. So in conclusion, there's a lot that goes into looking for a good location. By all means, I didn't cover all of them in this video, but hopefully this gives you a good starting off place. So when you start looking through properties, you can start to understand the dynamics at play and understand why a property may be going for a lot more over ask or a lot under ask, why it might be sitting, or why there might be 100 people at the open house. If you guys have questions, hit me up on my Calendly link. I'm happy to do a free 15-minute conversation. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.